But I'm Sonia Thomes, and welcome to our Orchestra Careers League Preview event today. So excited to have our special guests, and we're going to tell you all about League Conference. Um, but first, I want to introduce our special guests. David, I'll toss it over to you.
Sure. My name is David Stiers, and I'm the Director of Learning and Leadership Programs at the League of American Orchestras and oversee the content and the planning for the national conference each year.
Thanks. Heather.
Hi, everyone. I'm Heather Briere, Interim Director of Grants Programs at the League of American Orchestras. I am also the staff liaison for both the student group, so happy to be here today, as well as our youth orchestras division.
Thanks. Travis.
Hi everyone, I'm Travis Newton. In my day job is running an arts administration program at Lemoyne College in Syracuse, New York. I originally started out in the orchestra industry and also just recently released a book, the Orchestra Management Handbook, that I'm hoping will be helpful to folks who are, starting out in their career. And I'll be really excited to meet those who come to the conference this summer. So thanks for having me.
Thanks, Travis. So we're going to dive right in. We've got a lot to cover and plenty of time for questions. So feel free to put those in the chat or raise your hand. We'll be sure to answer all of those today. So we're going to kick this off because I'm not sure if everyone knows what the League of American Orchestras is. I've known for quite a while because I work at the Nashville Symphony, and it's just been such an amazing supportive organization for the orchestras I work for, but me personally. But David, I'm going to toss it back to you. Can you just tell us a little bit more about what is the League and why is there a conference?
Great. Thank you so much, Sonia. And this year, the League is actually celebrating our 80th birthday. So for 80 years, we have served as the National Trade Association and Service Organization for symphony orchestras across primarily the US and some in Canada. And we have sister organizations in the other arts groups, opera, chorus, dance, theater, etc. But we have been organized to help support the orchestra field. And in its founding in 1942, it was around the small budget orchestras coming together to learn from one another. And that idea remains true 80 years later, is that the League is here for orchestras to learn from each other, to each individual orchestra not have to reinvent its wheel, for them to share best practices. And we have about 700 member orchestras now, and we are by far the largest of the service organizations because there's more orchestras than anything else in the performing arts, just because every community from the largest major metropolitan cities to some of the smallest even rural communities have some sort of orchestra, and they range in budget sizes from $100,000 to $100 million. And then we also service not only professional orchestras, but semi-professional, community, volunteer, college, university, and youth orchestras as well. And we have a few international members also. And so part of that idea of how do we share knowledge with one another, network with our peers, because even though there's many orchestras across the country, you may be the only orchestra manager in your community. And so the conference, this is our 77th national conference, has been an opportunity for people from across the country to meet one another and to learn from one another and to welcome new people into the field. And we have about a third of our conference delegates who are new each year to the conference. It is their first conference. We actually have a first timer discount because of that. And we rotate the conference around the country. This year's conference in Los Angeles is the first time we've been back to LA since 2006. And the first time we've actually been on the West Coast since 2014. And so we are very thrilled to have the Los Angeles Philharmonic hosting our conference, as we have a major host each year. And this year is particularly special because California is one of the very few states that actually has a statewide association of symphony orchestras. the Association of California Symphony Orchestras, better known as AXO. They do their own statewide conference usually in August, but this year they approached us and said, what if we do our conference with your conference? So there's only one conference in California for orchestras to worry about going to in 2022. Because we do recognize orchestras are still financially recovering from the pandemic and worried about what the future. And so we thought it was a marvelous idea. And it's just been a wonderful partnership between the League, the Los Angeles Philharmonic, and the AXO member orchestras in California to put on this national conference this year. I could go on and on talking about the League, but I will pause there and ask if there's any questions before I jump into what the 77th National Conference will look like.
Well, David, I'll just jump in for a second because
Please.
I think the other significant thing about this year is it's the first in-person conference since
Absolutely.
we hosted it in Nashville in 2019. And so we haven't been able to be together in the same conference site, in the conference rooms, the ballrooms, the concerts, and see each other in person for 3 years. So I'm really excited because it's always such an encouraging time, an inspiring time. And yeah, I get to see people who do what I do. I'm vice president of operations at the Nashville Symphony, and it really does make a difference to be able to talk and share best practices, and kind of, it's like one big support group too, because we all love the work of orchestras, but it is hard work. So thanks so much for that overview, David. And so, yeah, let's dive in. What does it look like to come to the conference in just a couple weeks?
Great. It can feel a little bit overwhelming. And I actually was in your shoes 30 years ago. In spring of 1992, I was graduating from college and got a free registration to the League's National Conference. It was in Washington, D.C. that year for the 50th anniversary of the League. And I was just blown away and amazed by what the field is doing and how they are collectively wanting to move the art form forward. And if you have the sense that everyone seems to know each other, they sort of do. 2/3 of people are longtime conference goers, and we have people who attend conference every single year. And it is the opportunity to reconnect with old friends. But it's also a very friendly place to be. So even if you realize, oh, lots of people already know one another, that doesn't mean they don't want to get to know you as well. I was fortunate enough to have the executive director of my hometown orchestra at that conference. And so he and I sort of piled around together. And it was actually through that conference, I made connections to actually get my first job in the orchestra field. So I, again, love the idea of the field coming together. And I will, if you haven't seen it, show you a brief overview of the conference to just sort of graphically walk through what our week in LA will look like. I'll share my screen. And although the conference dates are the 1st to the 3rd, we always have pre-conference activities. And so if you can come in on Tuesday, May 31st, we do take advantage of what is special about our host cities. And so the Los Angeles Philharmonic this past fall opened the Beckman Yola Center. And so Yola is the Youth Orchestra of Los Angeles, which is their youth orchestra that Gustavo Dudamel founded about 15 years ago based on the El Sistema model that he grew up in Venezuela. And so they have built a brand new concert hall just for Yola. And it's in Inglewood, California. If you watch the Super Bowl, it's just down the street from the SoFi Stadium. But it's a wonderful facility. And you see the name Frank Gehry there. Many of you may know he is one of the preeminent starchitects, as he's called, living today, and is 93 years old and still going strong. And he designed the Walt Disney Concert Hall, the home of the Los Angeles Philharmonic, 20 plus years ago. And so when they wanted this new Beckman Yola Center, they went back to Frank Gehry and he designed it as well. And what makes it special is it's a reuse, that it was an original bank building that had become a Burger King. And he converted it into a concert hall. So if you can come in on Tuesday, feel free to join us. We have an extra fee to cover transportation and dinner at the Beckman Yola Center. And then there'll be tours of the center, a Q&A with Frank Gehry as the architect, and then a concert performance rehearsal by the Yola musicians. But then on Wednesday, June 1st, when the conference officially begins, and in the morning, we have 3 pre-conference seminars. Again, those are an additional fee, but if you are wanting to go in depth on topics of leadership, of diversity and governance, and on innovation and growth mindset, we have 3 pre-conference seminars on Wednesday morning that people are registering for when they register for conference, or you can actually register for the pre-conference seminars without registering for the conference. But then things start to kick off on Wednesday afternoon we'll do an orientation, particularly for all these first timers, from 12:30 to 1. Then we'll have 3 different constituency blocks. And the first one is from 1 to 3, which is where you'll meet as part of your students, and Sonia and Heather will go over that details in a few minutes. Then there will be an all delegate reception in our exhibit hall, which you're all invited to mix and mingle, not only with the orchestra field, but about 25% of our conference are people who are not with orchestras. They are artist managers, music publishers, people who are engaged with the orchestra field, but actually aren't part of an orchestra, but orchestras couldn't exist without them. And they bring their exhibits and promote their artists. And it's just, again, a wonderful gathering of everyone for our all delegate reception. And then we'll go over to Walt Disney Concert Hall for our opening plenary session for 4:30 to 6. There'll be a concert of Yola at that session, as well as a opportunity to hear Gustavo Dudamel in conversation with composer John Williams as sort of part of his 90th birthday celebration this year. We're thrilled to have John Williams with us. He actually received our Gold Baton Award in 2006, which is the league's highest honor. And so it's really marvelous that we could come back to LA, 16 years later and re-engage John. And the amazing thing is that we had a problem fitting him into the conference schedule because he has to be one of the busiest 9-year-olds. He's scoring the 5th Indiana Jones film and is flying off to somewhere on either Thursday or Friday. And so Wednesday afternoon was the only time of that week he was free to actually speak at our conference. So we're excited, though, to have him with us. And then that evening is a free night in LA. And this year we're having our first LGBTQIA plus affinity group reception that we have been working to gather those individuals from the orchestra field together as an affinity group this year. And so this will be the first year that we have done that. Then on Thursday will be a long day, but we start the day with a breakfast for Alana administrators. And so those are basically our people of color, African, Latin American, Asian, Native American, and Middle Eastern is in there somewhere. So we have a whole group of individuals from the field that will gather for breakfast. Then we have different elective sessions, and I'll actually go over those in a few minutes after I go through the schedule, but there'll be different elective sessions to choose from on Thursday morning. Then, as part of the conference registration is our annual meeting luncheon, which will have a chamber orchestra concert by Contrapuntus, which is a chamber group made up primarily of Colburn music students. And you'll hear more about the league, and it's our annual meeting. We have an invitation out to a special keynote that we hope will say yes. We're still waiting to hear whether we have that confirmed. But then after the luncheon will be another constituency block for you to meet together. And then after the dinner break is our conference concert. So there'll be a pre-concert lecture at 7, the concert from 8 to 10, and then after the concert, what is known as the tune-up party. And I'm sure Sonia remembers well throwing the tune-up party in Nashville 3 years ago. I don't even know where the name tune-up party came from. It's been around for at least the past 30 years, if not more. But it's basically an opportunity, again, for everyone at the conference to get together, to network, to enjoy the evening. And we're very excited about the Los Angeles Philharmonic's concert. It is part of their regular season subscription, and they have a theme of power to the people that has been going on through this entire year. And we're particularly pleased with the program for this concert. There'll be a world premiere by the Puerto Rican-born woman composer and Alejandro Negron. There will be a performance of Peter Lieberson's Neruda song sung by Janae Bridges, and then William Grant Still's Symphony No. 1, the Afro-American. So we're so thrilled by all-American and all music composed in the past 100 years for the conference concert. And then the next morning, after very few hours of sleep, there'll be an exhibit hall breakfast from 7 to 8, another block of elective sessions, a coffee break, where we're actually going to have one of the new innovations of the pandemic, Opus 3 performance truck. So if you've heard about the different trucks that orchestras have put together, some of them were just pickup trucks. Opus 3 has an actual paneled van that opens up into a concert stage, and they're going to have it on display on the street outside the hotel for that coffee break, and we're excited about that. Your final student constituency block, and then our final closing plenary session, where we'll be featuring Thomas Wilkins, who's the music director of the Hollywood Bowl Orchestra and conductor of the education programs at the Boston Symphony Orchestra, and just stepped down as music director of the Omaha Symphony as our closing keynote speaker. And then for anyone staying over that evening, the Los Angeles Philharmonic is opening Hollywood Bowl for us. It's about 2 weeks earlier than the season technically kicks off, but they're going to do a special fundraising concert for their education programs, and it'll be featuring Gwen Stefani and Branford Marsalis. And so we're very excited about the Hollywood Bowl concert being available for that evening. And then if you can't wait for the next conference, we'll be in Pittsburgh, June 14th through 16th, 2023. Another old haunt of Sonia's. And I was just in Pittsburgh this past week planning for that conference in just 14 months. And
Wow,
so we're very excited, again, having this annual conference. And as Sonia said, after a 3-year break, to be able to come back together. And then I just want to quickly walk through those elective sessions. Again, these are things to choose from. There's probably more than one you might want to attend, but there's sort of 3 main blocks, and then this sponsored innovation sessions. So some of our exhibitors will be doing sessions early on Thursday morning. And then the sessions that we have curated, again, the first block is on Thursday, June 2nd from 9 to 10:15. We're going to have a special performance of music by Black composers at the Colburn School of Music, which is, again, just sort of across the street from the Walt Disney Concert Hall and a short block from the Westin Bonaventure, where the conference is headquartered. Then we also have sessions on audience development and the future of climate change and the effect on orchestras, financial planning, and then a session on how the Beckman Yola Center came together as a public-private partnership. Then in the second block, we'll have a session on the amount of movies that are being played by orchestras now. Again, more information on audience research and diversity, sharing success stories from the California orchestras and dealing with the pandemic, looking at human resources and workforce issues in orchestras, and then looking at audio music distribution as well. And then that final block on Friday morning, again, we'll be looking at diversity, equity, inclusion with case studies from the corporate sector. Again, looking more about financial sustainability. I'm talking about philanthropy in orchestras, and then the enormous increase in digital and technological advances in the past 2 years with orchestras providing stream concerts, and then finally a session on women composers and residencies. So those are those elective sessions to choose from when you're not in your actual constituency meetings. And I'm happy to answer any questions about the conference now, or I'll turn it over to Sonia and to Heather to talk about your individual student constituency meetings.
Any questions before we dive a little bit deeper in? Oh, Kirsten, yes.
Oh, I was just going to clarify. So the electives are for everyone at the conference,
Yes.
but then the constituency meetings are just for students. Is that how that works, kind of?
Yes, and during that constituency meeting block, all the different peer groups will have their own individual. So you'll have your student constituency meeting,
Okay.
There'll be executive director constituency meetings, operations, board members, volunteers, conductors, etc.
Yeah, so there's an opportunity for us to meet with kind of our peers and our counterparts at every orchestra during those constituency blocks. And then we can all come together for those elective sessions, which I was looking at the website earlier today. I was like, oh man, I got to figure out, the hardest part is choosing what to go to, because you have to make a choice. Sometimes you can go to, try to go to the first half of this one or the second half of this other one, but it's really an exciting thing. It's kind of a good problem to have, that there's so many options during that elective time. And the open plenary, which plenary is, kind of a word that I don't ever hear or use except at a conference. It's like when everybody gets together in the same room and you hear the keynote, and it's really kind of the grand opening, and then there's a grand ending, and then the annual meeting is the other time where we see everybody. And so it's really fantastic when you look around the room and there's 900, 1,200 people in the room, and you realize these are the people that are, working hard to support the musicians of our orchestras and the orchestras in our communities. So it's a really inspiring opportunity to have all those different variations. But the constituency blocks, there's one every day. And so that's when we'll meet if you come as a student member, and we've got really fun content for every single day. But Heather, you and I have been talking behind the scenes, and Travis will pull you into this too. But Heather, you and I have been talking, I feel like, for weeks now about how to make sure this is just a really great experience for students. What are you excited about with them coming for the first time?
Well, I'm excited to be a part of this group in the inaugural year of the student group, getting together, having our own time to really dig into where are we now, where do we want to go in the future, and just, experience so much about our fields, because I think there's a lot of exciting ideas and voices amongst this group that really will shape the future of the orchestral field. So I'm just excited to gather with you all in person and be a part of it for the first time ever.
Yeah, and I think what I'm really excited is, I mean, to me, I feel like there's no difference really between myself and my college colleagues. Like, just because you haven't walked across a stage to graduation, you're already our peers. And so it's very important to me personally, and I know a lot of my professional friends who engage in this work, that we invite you now, like we incorporate you now into the work of the industry, because it will be so much so much easier for you to make your transition in your career. But also, I know you all have really awesome ideas and you're passionate about the work for orchestras. So I'm very, very excited. I've been waiting for this moment for a long, long time to be in person with our student members. So that first day, it's really important to me that we feel like we can come together. It's actually, that constituency block is the first thing that will happen when you hit the ground. So we'll have an opportunity to just say hi. Now you have a face and a name. You have some familiar faces that you can navigate the conference with, but also orient you to the space. Make sure you feel like you have your schedule good to go, how to maximize your experience at the conference, because you have those networking times, you have these opportunities to meet people in the field. How can you use those? And so we can talk about those, the all delegate reception, or going to the electives, and just the ways that you can really enjoy the experience, take it in, but also pack it in as much as you can. And so Travis, I want to turn it to you because you're going to be on that first day with us, because the other really important thing I think is if you don't really know how an orchestra works behind the scenes, a lot of these sessions might not make as much sense. So I think it's really important to give that context. So Travis, I brought you're the expert in for that first day. What can people expect from, what you're going to share with us on the first day?
Sure. Well, thanks for letting me hop in on this today. It's great to see everybody. And I'll just say, before I get to that, the topic of the conference itself and how useful it is for anyone really starting out in the industry. The last time I attended was in 2007 in Nashville. And that's before I sort of moved into academia. And so it's been a little while, and I'm really excited to be part of a conference, especially at a time when the field really seems to be changing rapidly. And that is, of course, true for many, many industries across our arts sphere. But not only given what's happened with COVID, but just, the reckoning with the past in terms of racial discrimination and all of the equity issues that the league has been tackling lately, which is excellent. I think that students really have an important place in these conversations. And so, of course, it'll be great to introduce the nuts and bolts of orchestras, the way that I really conceptualize orchestras and how they work. Of course, every orchestra is different, so there's no way to say this is how you do it, right? But I do think it's useful to think about relationships, both internal and external, as kind of a through line of how orchestras can relate both internally, musicians and staff and the board and other folks who are involved internally, as well as externally with folks in the community, whether it's funders or community organizations, students, and on and on and on. And so that's kind of the way that my brain understands orchestras. And it leaves a lot of room, obviously, for orchestras to be different. And they should be different because their communities are different. And if they're serving their communities, then the orchestras are different, right? So, so that's kind of my approach. And that's the lens and the framework that I'll be using when I present with Sonia at the beginning of the conference. And I'm really excited about that, and just really thrilled to be part of this inaugural year of students being involved in the conference, because I would have, as I've said to Sonia about 1,000 times, I would have killed someone if I could have had this opportunity to come to orchestra conference and meet people and really get to know what the field is prior to actually working at an orchestra. That would have been really handy. And so I'm really glad that you all are considering this, and I would love to meet you in person if you end up coming to the conference.
Thanks, Travis. Yeah, the goal of that first day in my mind is let's help you just get your footing in this conference experience. Honestly, it's not like you have to pre RSVP for the electives or anything. Sometimes I don't even choose till like 5 minutes before. I'm like, well, I guess I'm going to go to this one. So even if at the end of that session, you're like, okay, now I really want to know, now I know what my schedule is going to be on Thursday. Sometimes that might be a really helpful thing. I'm also hoping that once I know who of my professional friends are coming to conference, I'm going to ask that one-to-one, if I can, get a professional and a student matched up to walk you to the delegate reception. So you have now a professional friend to, walk and talk with. And just that is really, I feel like the best thing that we can do is help you get connected to people in the field as quickly as possible in this conference experience. That second day, so you've heard all the rest of the stuff that's going to happen, which is really exciting. And as a student group, we can kind of go to all the things together or not, it's just, you've got people, but that second day, we've got a much longer constituency block. And so we're going to kind of break it up in just a couple different chunks. First, we'll come together after lunch and just kind of debrief, like, how's it going? Do you need any help? Like, what do you think of conference? Just kind of share what our experiences are like so far. And then I'd really love to dive into kind of a working exercise. I'm really excited about this kind of visioning exercise. And Heather, you and I have talked about this a bit, but really I feel very strongly, we've already said it a couple of times, that you as a student member, your voice and your vision matters for our industry. And so we're going to really take some time to kind of explore, what is your vision? What is your voice? What is it that you care most about with the work of our orchestras? Because I just think that's really important, and we should celebrate that. So we're going to spend a bit of time about that. And then I'm going to tag some of my professional friends to come over, and we're going to do a career day panel. And that's going to be super fun, just to try to dive a little bit deeper, have people share their stories about how they even came to this field and this seat. I didn't know the career of orchestra operations existed until after grad school. I was an oboist. And so just people sharing their stories, and more people that you can get connected to before we kind of go on with the evening. But Heather, what else do you think about that second day?
I think that was a lovely summary, Sonia. So thank you. I'm really excited about what's going to come out of our discussion in the vision and voice.
Yeah.
And I hope we'll have an opportunity to share that a little bit with some of the other conference attendees.
And one thing you might do on Wednesday is, if people have a sense of what their schedules might be on Thursday, particularly for the electives, if you could divide and conquer and have the students who are at the conference go to the different electives, then when you come back together on Thursday afternoon, maybe you could spend some time doing report outs of what did each of you learn from the individual elective that you went to, so that if you can't attend every elective, unless you can clone yourself 4 more times, then you could hear what happened at the other electives by divvying it out among the student group that is there.
That's a great idea. And actually, all of us, that's what we essentially are doing when we go home after conference too, is reporting back to our home orchestras. Here's what we learned at conference. And so I think that's a great strategy that we can use as well. And then that Thursday night is the concert, and I'm working really hard. Heather and David and I have been talking about how can we maybe get some group student tickets to the LA Phil concert. We will figure out a way. David and I got a little bit further in progress to figure out what the options are. But because one of the shining moments of conference is to hear the host orchestra. And then the third day will come as quickly as before you know it. And Friday morning, we are going to gather, and Simon Woods is going to join us. And very excited. He's the president and CEO of the League of American Orchestras, and he cares deeply about involving students in at conference and in the work of the league. And so I'm very excited that he's going to come spend a little bit of time with us, and we'll be able to share a little bit about what our experience has been as the student group with him as well. And so I think that'll be a really great conversation. And then to kind of close out the time, actually, I am a member of the GM, the General Managers and Ops Managers constituency group. And so we're going to go take a little field trip and walk over to their group. And the reason why is, number one, it's just another opportunity to see professionals. But this conversation that I'm really excited about is when the pandemic hit and everything went virtual, my ops peers, we stayed very connected through monthly, actually, they might have been weekly at a certain point, Zoom calls. And it really formed a community and formed this just support group, and was really a way that we have been connected, really unlike any year before, because we only really saw people maybe on the forums online and at conference. And so what I'd love for them to share is, like, how do we then now leave conference and stay connected and really support each other? Because I think that peer support is really makes everything better, but also it strengthens our field and it strengthens the work of our orchestras. So I'm very excited. I think we've got it jam-packed. We'll still try to get a little bit of sleep. We'll hydrate well, eat when we can. But I really hope you consider coming to conference. So attendees, you've been very patient and listening to us talk a lot. What questions do you have about conference? Anything that we've talked about or haven't talked about?
I have a quick question for David. I know you said that when you were in our shoes, basically, you went to this conference, you ended up getting your first job. Um, what was your mindset going into the conference? Like, did you mean to get a job like through this conference? Was that your goal of it? Did you just go and happen to network with people? And I'm curious about that experience, I
Yeah,
guess,
so
because I'm in those shoes.
no, certainly. I had no intentions necessarily of getting a job, but it was 1992, and in US history, we were facing a recession, and arts were in pretty bad shape because of the recession as the rest of the economy. And so, like many of my classmates, we were looking to graduate school. And I had already planned to go to graduate school that fall to get a master's of arts administration degree. But I also had this feeling of I wanted to do something and work in the field if I could before getting that master's degree. And so I had in my mind that if an opportunity came around, I would take advantage of it. But I had the graduate school as the fallback. And again, it was just serendipity that I got a call from connections I made at the conference. And when they initially called me, I said, "Oh, well, thank you for the call, but I'm planning to go to graduate school." And so I had that sort of as my plan. Because by midsummer, I'd sort of resigned myself to go to graduate school. I hung up the phone and 30 minutes elapsed. And I picked up the phone and called them back and said, "Hi, remember me? You just called me about coming in for an interview. I've changed my mind. I want to come in for the interview." And 5 weeks later, at a million interviews, it felt like I got the call offering me the job. And I had let my graduate advisor know what was going on. And even she said, given the market at the time, she said, "If you can get a job in the arts, take it. Graduate school can always be there for you." And so literally on Friday, I got the call and I was to start classes on Monday. I had done everything but buy books. And so that was how I went from showing up at that national conference in June and starting my first full-time job in August.
Well, and Kirsten, I would just say you're there, sometimes you hear it's, who to be able to land that job, but it's who you have a relationship with. And so just think of this, take the pressure off, like just, go there to build relationship, to meet people. And then it's the what's after conference, right? Maybe be thinking of strategies about who do I want to follow up with after conference. I like to have like a notebook or someplace where I can like write down, actually, you'll probably get business cards and there's like swag and all the things, that you're carrying around. Everybody's wearing their big lanyards. So it's great because there are kind of these opportunities to just kind of walk up to anybody and say, "Hi, I see you're from Iowa, Orchestra, Iowa." And you can strike up a conversation and you have this shared values and this shared passion. But I would say on that career path, it's who you have a relationship with that can really support landing those jobs. Great question, though.
Yeah, no, it's great. And you have so many more tools today than I had 30 years ago with LinkedIn, with websites that you can learn about, and people can learn about you so much easier than 30 years ago. So be sure to have your LinkedIn profile up to date. And because when I get a business card, I typically find the person on LinkedIn and throw away the business card. And so that's why I think getting your materials, and it would not hurt because that's what I did 30 years ago. I carried copies of my resume with me. And so if someone asked, nowadays your LinkedIn can be your resume, but back then the only way was physical copies. So I had physical copies of my resume. And if a conversation led to it make sense to hand someone my resume, I did. And so that may be another thing to think about, actually having those available with you.
Mm-hmm. Great question.
I will say, Kirsten, I have 4 goals for myself for this conference, and I don't know if they're going to be helpful for you, but I'm happy to share in this group. So I want to learn. I want to connect with others who are doing similar work. I want to be inspired. And probably as importantly as the other three, I want to have fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is, you're going to be exhausted, but if you come, but it's really fun, and it's just try to be present, you know, and I think that is what I'm looking forward to as well. Any other questions about conference? Sarah?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure who to ask this, but there's something about artistic constituencies can watch the LA Phil rehearsal. I'm not sure who that would include.
So it's primarily our conductors.
Okay.
And so we do not do any type of master class with the music director of the host orchestra per se, but we do ask if they will open up their rehearsal. And it's primarily for the conductors to go see Gustavo Dudamel. Some of our artistic administrators may go to hear and see Janae Bridges. There may be some artist managers, some composers, but that's who tends to go see the open rehearsal.
Excellent.
You just mentioned, sorry, you just mentioned composers. What kind of profile of composers typically come? Because that's one of my interests ultimately.
Oh, that's a very good question. And this isn't quite the inaugural year. I think it'll be better even next year. But the league is a commissioning organization where we get funding from the Virginia B. Toolman Foundation to commission particularly women composers. And so we've had 5 world premieres this season of women composers that we've commissioned that have been performed by our member orchestras. We have 3 more next year. And we have a new consortium program that is launching within the next couple of weeks, where we'll have 6 new composers who will be premiered in the next year. And each of their world premieres will get 4 additional performances. And so we'll have 30 orchestras performing the new works by these 6 women composers. So 5 of the 6 women will be there. And in addition, if you're interested in composers, 2 to 3 other organizations you should know about is the American Composers Forum, headquartered in Minneapolis, and New Music USA, and the American Composers Orchestra, both in New York City. And so I have been in conversations with New Music USA and their new Amplified Voices, which is a new program they have for composers of orchestral music, and having some of their composers there as well. And we also know that the Los Angeles general area is a rich field for composers, particularly film composers. So we are actually hoping to build the beginnings of what may be a future composer constituency and be more deliberate in Pittsburgh next year, with this year sort of being a pilot. So those are the composers that we're expecting to be at the conference, in addition to the world premiere that we will have on Thursday evening.
Okay, thank you.
But in the exhibit hall, there will be lots of business partners who work with composers, publishers, artist managers. So even though the composer is typically not an employee of an orchestra unless they're there in a residency, we certainly can't have the art form without composers, and why we've particularly been trying to promote the performance and creation of music by underrepresented composers as well.
Thanks, David. So if you'd like to come to conference, the first step you would need to do is be a member of the league. And if you're a student, you qualify for a student membership. That means you're either actively in a degree program. I think actually it's high school, undergrad, graduate, or you graduated in 2021, or you're graduating in 2022. And so I put the link in the chat for the student memberships. It's $30 for the year. And it'll then get you access to a free registration up until the early bird deadline, which is May 12th, for conference. And that is a huge thank you to the league for making that free for professionals. It's $600-700 to come to conference. That registration includes a lot of the things at conference, but when you're looking through that schedule and you see a little, I think, extra dollar sign, some of the things are there's some add-ons, but you can go to all the constituency groups, the plenary sessions, the annual meeting this year, which is new, and the elective sessions. So, and there's the receptions. So there's a lot you can come to for that free registration. And so if you're new to Orchestra Careers, OrchestraCareers.com is a website. We've got Instagram and Facebook, and we are so passionate about helping students get their first career with an orchestra. And so I'm really excited that we're gonna do what we can. There's 1 week left to apply for our scholarship, and this is $500 towards your hotel and travel, because you still have to get to LA, right? And stay in somewhere for a couple nights. And so I'm gonna put a link in the chat, and until April 30th, 11:59 p.m. Central Time, you can apply for this scholarship. And Sarah, I already know you and I are going to talk tomorrow, which is great. So you just fill out that application, and then I'll be in touch with you. It's pretty simple, but we really want to enable anyone who is eligible and who wants to come and fills out that application by the deadline. We're going to contribute towards your hotel and travel to come to join us in conference, because I can't wait. It's going to be so great.
And the only thing I'd also add is, if you have an idea of orchestras you would like to work for someday, you may be open to any orchestra anywhere. But if you know you would like to be in this city or with this orchestra, we can probably make those connections. And so you let us know, and we can, like, if you like, I want to be in Little Rock, Arkansas, and, Christina Littlejohn is one of the nicest people in the world. We can get you a one-on-one with Christina Littlejohn at the conference. So, I mean,
absolutely.
If there is someone from an orchestra you want to work for, whether they have a position open right now or not, we can still help you make those connections.
And David, usually the attendee list is published on the league conference website at a certain point. So if you keep your eye out, it should
go up next week.
Oh, great. Because then you can actually scroll the list. I do this too. I come to the conference, and you can scroll through and just see and highlight some names. Yeah, I have no shame to go and get you connected to whoever you want to, even if I don't know them as well. So we'll do our best to get you connections with whoever.
And we just hit 700 over the weekend. And so our super early bird registration deadline was Thursday, and we knew there'd be a few stragglers. And so our goal was to get to 700 with the super early bird. And so that list should go up this coming week.
Okay, well, I'm just so excited. Thank you, David and Heather and Travis, for just your support and enthusiasm for this work. I'm just so excited to invite students to conference. If you have any questions, you can always email me at info@orchestracareers.com. Of course, we'll drop maybe some email addresses here in the chat. If you want to apply for that scholarship, I'll make sure there's a link in the description box for this video. And just apply by April 30th, which is in just under a week, or I guess a week from today. We would love to see you in LA. But before we close, is there any other questions?
I don't have a question. I just wanted to say thank you very much for everybody for taking the time to do this for us. It seems like a pretty amazing opportunity, and just us little old students, you didn't have to do this, so thank you.
You are never little old students. You are the future to our profession.
Right. And as I said, we are changing quickly. The field is changing so quickly, and so you all are going to lead that change. So don't be shy. If people don't want to listen to you, that's too bad. They should listen to you, because you will have ideas that no one's had yet.
You are already partners in this work with us. And so let's get you connected as soon as possible so we can, get you those jobs and enter the field. So I couldn't agree more. You are not forgotten. I want to center you in the work of the conference. Okay, great. That's it for now. Please don't hesitate to reach out. Find us on Instagram or Facebook, or email us, and we'll be happy to answer any other questions. Okay, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day. Bye-bye.